Okay, today we're going to be talking about best practices for trading over the counter. My background is trading over the counter foreign exchange, but today's conversation is going to be just as applicable to trading rates or commodities. We see a lot of buy side participants make some pretty rudimentary mistakes when trading over the counter. And the purpose of today's presentation is to make people aware of some of those mistakes and how they can correct those before it costs their firm a lot of unnecessary money in the process of trading over the counter. Okay, over the counter trading for buy side firms, best practices. The agenda is going to be first to understand what it is to be trading over the counter. And I'm going to be contrasting this activity with trading in a listed market. I'm going to be talking about the importance of asking for a two-sided price, asking for a price from more than one pricing provider, trading at the right time of day, particularly foreign exchange, and then performing transaction cost analysis on your trades after the fact in order to illuminate any mistakes that have been made. So the present situation people need to understand is that over-the-counter trading in foreign exchange in this example is a unregulated and occasionally highly profitable business for the banks. And I say occasionally because 90% of the time these trades are not resulting in unusual profits. And in 10% of the situations, they come across a buy-side participant that is performing a mistake, some of which I will be illuminating here for you in this presentation, and that ends up costing their buy-side firm tremendously. In this graph here, where I'm showing you is the last financial presentation from Silicon Valley Bank, and it's one of the few banks that actually detailed foreign exchange fees by product segment. And so you can see here that foreign exchange fees, and for Silicon Valley Bank, this was just spot trades, were a significant component of their overall core fees. People need to understand that in these over-the-counter trading venues, they have an adversarial relationship to their banking partner. Their profit is your loss. And so all these graphs, all these numbers, this 349 million of fees, those were all a cost directly to their client base. And so a lot of buy-side participants, they're poorly trained and sometimes apathetic, honestly, in terms of mitigating these costs on behalf of the firms they work for. There's certainly some principal agent dynamic going on that we've observed. People that are actually performing the transaction, they don't make or lose money depending on how well those transactions are performed, whereas the person at the bank absolutely is making and losing money depending on the pricing that is being used for these transactions. In general, transaction costs for over-the-counter trading is not well understood, so I want to help illuminate some of the things that are going on in this practice. So the first thing I want to talk about is the difference between a listed and an over-the-counter market. I'm using a listed market sort of generically with alongside a price aggregated market. But generally a listed or a price aggregated market, you would typically see when trading equities, for example. You have a bunch of market participants, and if you could envision them all sitting around a table and all freely conversing their interest for particular financial instruments. So it could be a share of Oracle stock, or in this case, the example we're going to be using is this individual buy-side participant, and they have an interest in a purchase of 1 million euros against dollars, right? And so they have an interest, they're looking at this aggregated pricing market, and there are other members of the market that have decided to display to the market their interest for both buying and selling euro dollar. So in this example, participant A, they're indicating an interest of a bid of 104,155 and an offer of 104,180. Market participant B is indicating an interest of 104,175 to 104,200. And so combining those two participants together, you get what they call the top of book, which is the aggregated best bid and best offer. In this case, participant A has the best offer, participant B has the best bid. So the top of book for euro is 104,175 to 104,180. Okay, so to the extent that our buy-side participant looks at what the actual depth of the book is, it's going to look something like this. We have Bank A is showing the best offer, participant B is showing the best bid, and participant A is showing a depth. So they're willing to transact 10.7 million at a price of 104,180. Participant B is willing to transact at 104,175 on the bid at 12.9 million. And so that's basically the top of the book. You can see the volume here, and then basically you can see here that there might be a participant C that's also introduced his interest to be a bid of 14 million at 104,170. So this is going to be behind the top of the book. That's the participant that's showing 104,175 for 12.9 million, right? So here we are as a buy-side participant. We're operating in an aggregated pricing market, and basically we go out with our $1 million of interest to buy euros, and we hit that ask, and our entire transaction goes through at 104,180. There are situations where a buy-side participant might come into the market looking for more than what is at the top of book. And so you can see here the aggregate between the best two ask is 20.7 million. So if we're a buy-side participant, we come in for 20 million, we do what's called sweeping the book. And so we take all the 10.7 million, and then we take 9.3 of the next best price at 104,185. And so we get an all-in price that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 104,1825-ish as a buy-side participant, as a buyer of 20 million euros against dollars. And so one thing that a lot of these aggregated markets or listed markets have in common is that they're offering somewhat homogeneous products. And so this, in the equity market, there's only really one kind of equity for Oracle, for example. In spot FX, there's really only one spot price for euro dollar. It does often come to be that an individual market participant may be looking for a specific derivative instrument. And here I'm looking at a 6-month euro dollar forward, that they would have to go to individual market participants in order to understand what kind of price that they can get. And so that's really when this over-the-counter market comes into place. I'm using a 6-month forward here as just an example. It is certainly the case that even in a well understood and commonly transacted product like euro dollar spot, an individual participant will reach out over the counter and ask that participant for a price in euro dollar spot. So in this example here, we have the same buy-side participant, and they're reaching out directly to Bank A and saying, hey, look, I have an interest in 1 million euros against dollars, and I'd like to understand what kind of prices you would make available to me. At the same time, perhaps this individual reaches out to Bank B, and they ask them, hey, look, I have an interest in 1 million euros against dollars. What kind of price can you give me, right? And so as we just looked at in our prior example, the true market, the aggregated spot market, is showing us a price of 104,175 to 104,180 here. Bank A may come back, and this is a very typical corporate spread or buy-side spread. They may come back with a price of 104,170 to 104,200. So that's 3 pips wide. Bank B may come back with 104,160 to 104,190, which is also 3 pips wide. So the market, so to speak, to the buy-side firm is 104,170 to 104,190, which combines the best bid and offer from the participants that they're getting prices from. So the first problem in trading over the counter is that more often than not, the spreads are going to be wider than what you would see as a participant in a listed market or a participant in an aggregated pricing market, right? So that's the first problem. You're gonna pay more alone just for the convenience of being able to reach out and ask on an over-the-counter basis for pricing. The next problem with trading over the counter is that there actually is nothing preventing the buy-side trader from transacting at a price that is worse than another price that's observed by them that's actually a better price. And this could be for a host of reasons, but we tend to see very little control on the trading platforms or in the training of the individuals. Of course, you'd be naturally incentive to get the best price, but we often sometimes see that clients are not transacting at the best price. So that is for sure a lack of structure surrounding this over-the-counter process that buy-side participants, there's nothing that's compelling them to transact at the best observed price. Okay, problem number 3 that we see often is that the buy-side participants come to the market and they indicate their interest prior to transacting. So in this case, this particular buy-side participant comes to the market and says, hey guys, look, I'm a buyer of 1 million euros against dollars. Show me a price. Bank A and Bank B are licking their chops because they know this participant is going to be a buyer of euros. So they're going to show them what they call one-sided price. In this example, Bank A is showing 104,250. Bank B is showing 104,240. Both of those prices are significantly away from the market, and both of those prices are going to tend to be worse than the offer to the extent that you ask for a two-sided price. So how much worse? So this is a summary of a subset of our observed transactions from our client base that have allowed us to share this aggregated information. And basically what we see amongst our client base is about a 10% observation of clients that are asking for only a one-sided price. And when we're doing transaction cost analysis, we look at this in terms of cost per million. And you can see here that the cost a million for a two-sided price is on average $67 per million, whereas as a one-sided price, it's $86 per million. So effectively, it's 22% cheaper to ask for a two-sided price. So that's the first thing we advocate for buy-side participants. Always come to the market asking for a two-sided price. There are these mid-market banks. I personally had a situation where I was trying to buy 20 million euros for a client, and they will not give you, First Republic would not give you a two-sided price. I'm sure the same is similar for Silicon Valley Bank. There are simply market participants that are not giving their clients two-sided prices. I'd be very cautious about these situations. It's going to cost you a lot more than would have otherwise. Okay, problem number 4 when trading over the counter is that market participants are only asking for a single price, right? Even if you're asking for a two-sided price, you're only asking Bank A for those two sides. In this example, I'm asking Bank A, and I've already told them that I'm going to be a buyer of euros, so it's sort of a double whammy here. But prices are dramatically different in the market for a bank that you're only asking them and them alone for a price versus asking for two banks for a price. And the reason is because most of the trading platforms, I know 360T and FXall provide this information. They will communicate to the bank that this is a non-competitive RFQ. And in those situations, the RFQ pricing is algorithmically much worse than a situation where a bank is in a competitive situation. Okay, even if you know that you're going to be transacting with a particular bank for a particular reason, you would still ask for more than one bank in the RFQ session. So let's say you had a trade maturing with a particular bank, you didn't want to settle gross, so you know you're going to roll the trade over with a particular bank. Go ahead and ask multiple banks, even if you know you're going to be transacting with one bank, because the way the algorithms work, you just get a much better price when it's a competitive situation. Okay, one of the things we see that costs our clients a lot is in restricted currencies like India or Brazil, where the local onshore subsidiary may only have one credit counterparty. Maybe it's their cash management bank, and they're just getting their faces ripped off because the local bank knows exactly what side they're going to be on, and they know it's a non-competitive situation. So in these situations where you're sort of forced to transact with the individual bank, go to that bank, go to the relationship manager, and negotiate to transact spot foreign exchange off of a fixing rate. In the case of India, it could be it's usually a central bank rate, the RBI rate. In Brazil, Central Bank of Brazil. You can also negotiate for some of these spot fixings off the WM Reuters company, but don't go and buy onshore funding with a single bank where they know exactly what's going on. It tends to be, it'll be 5% of your foreign exchange volume. It'll be 90% of your cost. So here's the chart from our client base by bank count. You can see roughly 8.5% of our total observed transactions are done with only one bank. In that case, the average cost per million is 352, whereas if they're asking two banks, that price drops to 191. And you can see here, this chart, the more banks you ask, the better your pricing. Most of the clients that we have looked at their transactions are asking between 4 and 7 banks. And this is one of the fibs that was told to me by the banking community that, hey, you don't want to ask too many banks because it communicates too much information to the market and that will ultimately work against you. Well, guess what? Based on the information that we've seen, the more banks you ask, the better your price. And that's just a rule of thumb. So to the extent that you have 15 credit counterparties, every time you go to the market, you should be asking all 15 of them to participate in the RFQ session. Okay, the next thing we look at is what time of day are we transacting? We've broken the trading day into actually 4 sessions: the Asian session, the European session, the North American session, and then sort of the no market session. Obviously, we don't advocate trading between GMT 20 and GMT 22. You can see here that there's a 4-hour period of the European North American session crossover, and you can see the equivalent South African MEX cost in basis points of trading, and you can see how far it dips during that London, New York liquidity crossover. So this is a bit of an inconvenience to our West Coast clients, but more often than not, we advocate for clients to come and get all their trading done in that European New York crossover hour. Obviously, if you're trading dollar yen, it probably doesn't matter, but just generically across the board, you get best pricing when you're trading that New York London hour. Okay, so how much of a difference does it make? Well, you can see on a cost per million basis, most of our client trades, 65%, are happening in the New York London hour, and an average cost per million is 68. The New York session by itself, average cost per million is 92, and Europe average cost per million is 82. Obviously, where you're having no market, you have an average cost per million at 388. We strongly advise not trading in the period of time where there's no market. It's only an observation of about 0.5% of our client trades are happening during that period. Okay, transaction cost analysis. We highly advocate all buy-side participants to perform transaction cost analysis. Transaction cost analysis is mandatory for many market participants. On the asset manager side, there was a lot of lobbying, and the buy-side non-asset manager participants have been exempted from performing TCA. We, again, strongly advocate for it. Our version of TCA is broken into 3 critical components. We look at the market mid-rate from a third-party market vendor at the millisecond that your quote has arrived to the market. So before you've transacted, you hit the RFQ send button. The mere arrival of your pricing inquiry to the market provides the market information. There are situations where the market will trade away from you. Perhaps you're using the RFQ to execute a merger that's been announced. You're buying, a Canada company in Canadian dollars. You come into the market asking for, dollar Canada for 300. Even if you're asking for a 2-sided price, everybody knows that you're going to be a seller of dollars. buyer of Canada. And so the market tends to drift away from you in those situations. The next timestamp we look at is at the millisecond of execution. We look at the market mid rate and try to determine if the bank has skewed their two-sided price away from you. So to the extent that the client mid rate is different than the market mid rate, we measure that skewness. And the third and most traditionally understood component of transaction cost is just taking the average of the bid and offer that the client observes, and then looking at either the bid or the offer rate and dividing it by that midpoint. And so that's the traditional spread component here that we're looking at. And so really our definition of transaction cost is the summary of those three components. And again, we strongly advocate all clients either on a semi-annual or annual basis performing transaction cost analysis on their over-the-counter transaction. So that's it for this presentation. Feel free to visit our website at atlasfx.com. Send us email to get more understanding about our transaction cost analysis service. It tends to save clients immeasurably relative to not performing this analysis. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more analysis and videos like this when they come out. Thanks for your time.